Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to make a skirt. We haven't done a lot of skirts on my channel, I think, apart from a few, and this time, since it's summer, I was thinking about doing like a really cute, summery, white Mediterranean mini skirt. And I did a little sample right here because I really fell in love with these seams right here, these horizontal seams that are in my fabric. And I think it looks really pretty, as well as giving the ruffles a bit more, I don't know, structure. So it stands more, it doesn't fall as usual. In my opinion, it's just a bit more structured and it looks really pretty. So I was thinking, what can I do with this type of fabric manipulation, if you will? And to my mind, a skirt wasn't far off, so that's what we're gonna do today. I already have the pattern ready and finished, printed out. I have everything cut out. Basically what I did was just make the waistband to my size, and then I just added gathered tiers basically. So I have this fabric right here with the tiny little holes that will be gathered a lot. So I have it 2.5 times the length of the tier above, basically where it's sewn onto. So this waistband basically times 2.5 makes the length of the first tier. And then I'm gonna have a second tier that is attached to the basically lining, which is just 1.5 times my waistband. So I made the second tier 2.5 times the first tier lining, so 2.5 times the 1.5 times longer waistband, basically. Sounds all a bit confusing. It's also, if you have the pattern on in front of you, it's also like 2 times unfold, 3 times unfold, and so on and so forth. It's like math that you have to do, and it's probably the easiest if you just think through it from the very beginning when making a pattern like that. But that's just basically what I did. So it's a whole bunch of rectangles that I have right here. But I'm going to show you how to put all of this together, and I'm super excited, and let's go. Okay, sorry, I just quickly need to mention that throughout the making process of this video and the skirt that you can see half finished in the background, I literally just saw my problem here. I just saw that the skirt is going to end up being too short. My length math was kind of off, which is nothing to worry about. I already fixed it with a pattern piece that is gonna sit right here. So it's gonna give the skirt in front and back 10 centimeter more length, which I think is gonna be ideal and enough. So every time that I'm referring to the length of the waistband, I am talking about the length of this piece right here, the bottom line of this piece right here. I'm going to call it waist triangle, something like that. So every time that I'm saying waistband, I'm gonna put thing text block in the middle of the screen so that you know what I'm talking about. So I fixed it with this piece right here. I think it's gonna give the skirt another designer aspect as well. So I'm pretty happy actually with this piece here. So yeah, that's all that I wanted to say, and I am going to film how to make these pieces, the triangular waistband pieces, right now. Sorry about that. I hope I'm gonna fix it. Fingers crossed. Let's do it. So to prepare the triangular waistband, we have 3 pattern pieces, one that lays on fold, and then the other one that has a seam in the center back. And we're just gonna put right sides together and close the side seams. We're gonna do exactly the same on the facing. You don't need to overlock this as it's gonna be hidden. We're going to iron the seam allowances apart. So the first thing that we're going to start with is the waistband. I already have interfacing on my waistband right here. I used just waistband interfacing that already has these punctuations in here so that it's easier to fold the waistband how I want it to be folded in the very end. So the first thing that we're going to do is just iron it in half And if you followed my channel for a longer time already, you know exactly how I am manufacturing waistbands. I do it always this way because in my opinion it's just the easiest method and also looks the neatest in the very end. So once I'm done with ironing the waistband in half, I am ironing one side, the seam allowance of one side, towards the inside, so that once I sew it on the skirt itself, we're having the easiest time sewing on the waistband. And the waistband is already prepared. We can put this aside for later on. The next thing that we're working on is the first tier. You're gonna find different pattern pieces for different sizes. So this one right here is for sizes XXS and XS. I am using an XS for this skirt. So you're gonna find another panel that says Ruffles Tier 1, cut a few times on fold, with sizes S to 3XL. That is because, as you can see here already, this here is 70 centimeters wide. So this is for standard fabrics, salvage to fold, or like in this case here, fold to salvage. You can just put it on the fabric and cut this off. The width, just add seam allowance and you should be fine. I have this fabric right here, which has like these cute little holes in it. This is a muslin fabric, so this has like this cute structure. It's really, really smooth and really nice to touch, which just lays a bit smaller, a bit not as wide as standard fabric. That's why this here does not fit. But if you're using normal standard fabric, this will fit on your pattern. And that is also the reason why I have different pattern pieces for different sizes, because everything above XS will be too wide if you only cut it out once on fold. So for everything above XS, you will have to cut it out more times. I think it's just 2 times. I don't have it right here, but you're gonna find cut 2-3 times, whatever it is, written on your pattern piece right here. So you're just gonna cut this out on fold once, twice, and however times it's written on there if you are a bigger size than XS. That's just something that I wanted to point out. Most of the pattern pieces have for specific sizes different pattern pieces because of that reason. So not only tier 1 but also tier 2, and then for the underskirt I think tier 2 also has different pattern pieces for, like has 2 sets of pattern pieces. Obviously only cut out the one for your size, but that's, I think, pretty obvious. So next up you can see these lines that I already drew on my pattern piece. I used a washable marker, so when I iron this will be gone. Be sure to also use something similar to that because these will be visible otherwise. And as you can see, I just transferred the stitching lines that are on the pattern pieces, you're going to find them on tier 1 and tier 2, onto the fabric, because this is where we're going to sew these small little folds in. And that's what we're going to do in the very beginning. We're going to stitch the different pattern pieces of the tiers together to form one long piece. So in my case, this is already cut once, so this is one full pattern piece which lays on fold. We can put the lines already in this pattern piece, but for the tier 2, for example, I cut out 3 times this pattern piece on fold. So I have 3 of these pieces right here. So I'm going to put these right sides together first, and then I'm going to add the seams into the pieces basically in one go. I have 4 different ones, and obviously I want to have like one whole panel that I can put these on. Otherwise at the seams it won't match up, and that's not cute. So we're going to make it one panel first and then add these stitching lines here. I'm going to show you how you do that. So what I like to do is start at the smallest bit. You just fold it at the fold line and just stitch very, very closely to the fold here. You want to be very even because that's going to be visible in the very end, and then you just continue on doing that with all of the lines right here. I would suggest to hem this piece first, which I will be doing as well. So I will be putting the raw seam twice towards the inside. I'm going to fold it twice, 5 millimeters towards the inside, and then stitch very closely to the inner fold, which is going to be somewhat next to the fold line right here. So that's what I'm going to do first, and then I'm going to add the stitches to the fold lines. And this is what it's going to end up looking like. So we're going to iron this, of course, then it's going to look less messy. I'm going to iron the folds, I think, upwards. I don't think it matters. You can iron them however you want. You want to stretch it upwards while ironing. And while doing that, as you can see, the black lines go away as well, so that's pretty handy. And don't worry if you stretch out the fabric lengthwise, because we're gonna ruffle it anyways, and the more length, the more ruffles. So this is totally fine. As you can see, it already makes some folds here, which is totally fine and in our favor. So don't worry about that too much. Usually I'm like all about not stretching out the fabric while ironing and so on. But for this project, it's actually what we want. So just like that, and then we can continue with tier 2. And since we want to have this on the second tier as well, we're going to have to put our tier 2 panels together first to form one long panel. So this is going to be a lot of work because we're dealing with about 4 meters of skirt basically that we're going to ruffle together. So this is going to be a lot of sewing, but basically what you want to do is take your tier 2 and put it down, and then you take another tier 2 and just put it right sides together with this piece, sew it together and iron the seam open, and do that until you have no pieces left. So you have one long panel, and then you're gonna stitch these folds into place as well and make this, but in very long. So that's what we're basically gonna do. That is all already, and then we're just gonna ruffle it up, put it all together and call it a day. So this is a pretty easy project, but it has a lot of, long tasks to do. So have that in mind when doing this. This is going to take a while, but let's stop talking about it. Let's actually do it. I am done now with all of this. This was a whole lot of work. So these are the 3 pieces put together to one panel to form tier 2, and I'm gonna put that aside because we're going to continue with gathering. So this is our waistband, and this is tier 1, and we're gonna need underskirt tier 1 as well, and we're going to gather all of this and all of this of the underskirt tier 1 to fit the waistband. I'm going to do that with my gathering foot, but you can obviously always do that by stitching into the seam allowance here. I prefer stitching in the seam allowance twice with your biggest stitch, and then you just pull on the bobbin thread of both of the seams, or just one seam, whatever you prefer, and it will gather as well. You're just gonna gather it to the size of your waistband. And you're gonna do that separately, as these have different lengths to them, and then once it's gathered, we're gonna put them together. Okay, so tier 1 is basically done. I just put these up together so that you can see what it's going to end up looking like. This is going to be our lining where we're going to attach tier 2 to on this seam right here. That's why it's not hemmed yet. We're going to overlock it together with tier 2. And then also the underskirt of tier 2 is going to be attached to the ungathered side of the underskirt of tier 1. So to this raw edge right here. Let's put this aside for now and continue doing exactly the same with tier 2 and the underskirt of tier 2. I have not put my underskirt of tier 2 together yet, but I'm going to do that really quickly. So I'm just putting the right sides together, stitching it right here, and then also overlocking it. This is going to be in the front, so this is going to be my center front line, as I only have it parted in 2 parts. There will be different partings for different sizes, so keep that in mind. You probably have 3, maybe you also only have 2, depends on your size, but everything will be written on the pattern itself, so just that you're not confused. You're just gathering it to fit the tier above, more or less. So that's all you have to do. I'm going to do that really quickly and come back once I'm gathering again. Before I am gathering the underskirt, I'm first of all pressing the seam to either side, doesn't matter. But then I will also be hemming the underskirt because nothing is gonna get attached to the hem of the underskirt. So we also want it to look nice and pretty. So I am just going to do exactly the same method. I'm gonna use my hemming foot, so I'm folding my hem 5 millimeters inwards twice and then top stitching it as per usual. You can also, to reduce bulk, depends on what kind of fabric you're using, just overlock it and leave it as is, as it will be hidden by the tier 2 fabric right here, or you know, whatever other preferred method you have of hemming pieces, but I will be folding it twice and then top stitching it. This is my construction here. So basically have my fabric pinned here in the middle. This is the length that I needed to gather it to tier 1, to the underskirt of tier 1. And if you have it on tension, it gathers more easily. So you can just, you know, start at one end, gather it towards the middle. And since this is just half of it, you can just, you know, do one side and then repin and then do the other basically. And it works pretty well. So if you have any, if you can do this, like I'm doing it at all somehow, I would recommend. Like this. So this is a lot of gathering here. That's gonna be really cool. And then I'm just gonna repin this, mark my middle so that I don't forget where it is. And I think I'm just gonna turn it around because I'm right-handed. Okay, so we're gonna start with our tier 1 underskirt, and we're going to attach all of this to the raw edge. I'm going to start with my overskirt, so with the real fabric. I'm gonna find my center front, which I marked with a pin right here. That's gonna get attached right sides together with the center front of my underskirt of tier 1. And I'm going to attach both of the skirts, so the underskirt of tier 2 and tier 2, to the hem of the underskirt of tier 1. I know it's complicated. At the same time, I'm just gonna pin them separately. So as you can see, this the underskirt should fit together with the gathered tier 2 skirt. So I'm just gonna pin these together. And just do exactly the same on the other side. And the underskirt of tier 2 is gonna get attached on the other side of the non-gathered layer, because once we have everything, you know, folded downwards, the seam here that we are going to overlock as well, but still the seam here is going to be hidden on the inside, and you're going to have a nice inside of the skirt as well. So that's why we're going to do that. I think I'm also going to understitch that seam just to have everything lay where it's supposed to lay and have nothing like go up or down where it shouldn't. So I'm just gonna pin this exactly like I pinned the tier 2 layer and try to keep everything here at the raw edge at the same height, so that once I stitch it at 1 centimeter, it catches the different fabrics all together at the same distance to the raw fabric, basically, because the middle layer sometimes can be a bit tricky and, you know, can try to tuck away on the inside, especially since the inner layer is not gathered and doesn't have that much room to, you know, play around. So just be careful with that. I'm also going to put extra pins on the inside, or like onto the skirt here, that I usually wouldn't pin. And once all of the pinning is done, I can sew these layers together and overlock it. we can go ahead and probably just steam this so that it lays in the correct direction. I did that with the ruffles as well and it worked pretty nicely. So I'm just folding everything like this and then just with the steam. I'm going over this like this and keep the ruffles basically intact, but make it go in that direction where I want it to. And I'm going to repeat that with the other layer as well, if it hasn't already worked on that too. But as you can see, it goes for all layers basically. You don't need to steam that much. Works pretty nicely. So just like that, that's all you need and it should stay nicely. And I'm going to continue with the tier 1 of my outer layer, which is this piece right here. This one just goes right on top here. And the length is just a tiny bit longer than the underskirt, so it should just go over top of that seam. And this one is just going to get stitched into the seam allowance as the waistband gets attached to this seam, to the gathers right there. So you don't need to, first of all, you should not stitch into the visible seams, not at 1 centimeter, but like just into the seam allowance, because we're going to do that with the 1 centimeter once we put the waistband on. So I'm just going to match these two pieces up as I did with the other tier. So I'm just gonna make one layer out of the two tier 1 pieces, underskirt and outer layer, and then I'm gonna attach the waistband. So to prepare the triangular waistband, we have 3 pattern pieces, one that lays on fold and then the other one that has a seam in the center back. And we're just going to put right sides together and close the side seams. We're going to do exactly the same on the facing. You don't need to overlock this as it's going to be hidden. We're going to iron the seam allowances apart. We're just going to put wrong sides together of these two, and we're going to treat this as the waistline, as the waistband, as I already said. To do this, we actually have to put this to the actual waistband. So the iron seam is going to be the wrong side of the waistband, just because otherwise you won't be able to put the zipper in. So we're going to attach the non-iron side of the waistband to the right side of the triangular waistband of your fashion fabric by just matching up the front and then also the back. And the lining of the triangular waistband gets attached to the already ironed up side of the waistband, right sides together as well. And that way we can treat this as one piece, and then also the inside as the lining of the waistband as it's supposed to be, basically. So this is gonna make it possible for us to put the zipper in. Otherwise, it's gonna be like a big hassle if you have so many pieces apart, basically. So like this, and then to the other side we're going to attach the right side of the lining of the triangular waistband. And we're gonna sew both of these together. And we're going to iron all of the seam allowances into the straight waistband. So everything just gets ironed upwards. And same goes to my fashion fabric. also into the straight waistband. And once you fold this down, it forms the waistband and the length that we need, just like this. So the other way around, basically. This is how it's gonna lay, and the ruffles will get attached to this line down here. We are going to iron to prepare for stitching later on the lining side of the waistband as well. So I'm just transferring whatever I did to the straight waistband onto the triangular waistband. So I'm ironing the seam allowance of the triangular waistband upwards into the piece. And it's important to do the lining side of the triangular waistband for the zipper. So if you do the other way around, you won't be able to put the zipper into the skirt, and obviously that's not what we want. So just like this, and now we can attach the ruffles to the fashion fabric side of the waistband. So I have my skirt right here. I'm just gonna turn it around so that the right side lays outwards. And I am going to find the center right here, I think. Right here. Which is gonna get attached to the center of my waistband, just like this. And then I'm going to match up my waistband with the ruffles right here. Okay, so it's zipper time. I already prepared my center back and my zipper. This is gonna get attached from the middle of the straight waistband to the notch that you're gonna find in the pattern, the zipper notch right here. And we're gonna do that as we usually put zippers in. So I'm gonna open up my zipper and then put right sides together with my skirt. I'm going to have the plastic stopper be right at the point where I put the notch in, so like right at the middle of my straight waistband is what I was trying to say. And then I'm going to put pins in all the way down. I'm not stretching anything. If anything, I would be stretching the zipper. Otherwise, the seam will get bubbly and we don't want that. And I'm just gonna pin it down all the way towards the notch. And then I'm gonna use my zipper foot and sew from the notch all the way up to the middle of the waistband up here, where I also have a notch. And make sure when you sew that all of your seam allowances lay where they're supposed to lay. So everything should be laying towards the waistband. So up here towards the straight waistband and up here towards the triangular waistband. And we're gonna sew this in place and then mirror the placements of all of the seams to the other side. And now I'm going to close my zipper and mirror all of the placements onto the other side of my skirt, to the other center back. And I do that with pins. So I have a couple of seams where my zipper is right here. So I'm going to put pins right where the seam is. And that's what I'm going to use to mirror the placement of the zipper. And that works for me very well. And that's why I'm recommending this to you, as I know the troubles with, mashing up all of the seams while putting a zipper in. And now that I have all of the needles in, I can open the zipper back up all the way and then put right sides together of the other side with the zipper and match up all of the seams with the needles that I have in my zipper band. So like this goes right here. And then I can also stitch from notch to notch. And then once I close this, I can check whether all of the seams fit together nicely. And as you can see here, they fit together very well. So I can keep it like that. And we can continue with putting the center back of the skirt together here. So the remaining piece down here. I'm gonna turn wrong sides out and then just treat everything basically as one layer. So I'm just putting pins in here to make it a bit more easier for me. So I have the tier 1 layer that needs to match up with all of the seams and then also the hem, obviously. So I'm going to put pins in right here. And then on top of that, I'm going to match up the tier 2 and all of the seams here. And then however it falls here together with the tier 1, I'm just, as I said, gonna treat this as one layer just to make it easier for me. And last but not least, I'm going to add the lining layer here. And I'm just gonna sew this until the notch here, trying to match up with the seam that I previously did for the zipper. And then I can overlock everything open, like separately, and then I have a neat finish in the very back. And let's iron the seam allowance open. So as you can see, I just overlocked the whole center back, including the zipper, just to have nothing fray. This fabric, or these two fabrics, seem to have a, tendency to fray a lot. So I just wanted to prevent that and just went to overlocking everything together. And this is what it looks like from the right side of the fabric. As you can see, I tried to match up everything as best as I could. It seemed to have worked out quite well. So I'm just gonna give this a press from the right side as well. It's probably best to go in the direction of how the folds are ironed and sewn into the fabric, just like that. And now we can continue to close up the waist, and then the skirt is done. So I'm going to open the zipper for that because we're going to tuck away this seam right here towards the inside. And how I do this is I open the zipper back up and then just fold this right at the fold line right here downwards onto the zipper. While doing that, I'm trying to match up the ironed fold with the seam of the outer fabric because that's exactly where it's supposed to lay. And I'm only going to stitch until the fold here. So I'm going to put a needle in and just stitch from here upwards. And while doing that, I'm going to try to put the zipper up here towards the side and fold it nicely. I'm also going to try to match up the seam here and just put needles in to hold it in place while sewing. And this is going to hide all of the seam allowances on the waistband. So right here, and then I can use a one-sided foot as I have the teeth of the zipper right here to close the waistband. And I'm going to repeat the same thing here on the other side. So just like this, and I'm gonna stitch this. I can now cut away the edge right here, just a tiny bit so that it turns over easy, or like more easily, just like that. And I can turn everything right sides out. The zipper should pop out the edge anyways, once I close the zipper here. So like this, And that's how it should end up looking like. And on the inside, the seam allowance is tucked away here. Now the last thing to do is top stitch the lining of the triangular waistband onto the outer fabric. I'm going to open this back up and also turn it right sides out to do this, like this. I want this seam allowance to be on the inside, and now I can go around my skirt and just cover the stitching line of where I attached the skirts to the triangular piece. So this seam right here. Just cover this, so once I stitch from the outside, which I would always recommend as that's the side that's going to be visible, the lining will be caught basically. I'm also going to match up the seams that I have, so the side seams and front and back seams, like this. It's probably easiest if I just lay it flat down on my table and just go around and pin this close, and then I'm going to top stitch it from the right side of the fabric. And since this is now a circle, it's easier said than done, so take your time for that, so that everything also gets neat and that you're going to end up liking the result. That's the most important thing. And now I can stitch very closely to the seam onto the triangular waistband all around to fix it in place. And that's it already for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. It was a lot of fun sewing this, even though I had a few troubles in the middle, but I ended up fixing it and I am super in love with the result. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below and ring the bell so you'll get notified every time that I post. I post on Sunday, so you can keep an eye out for that. And in the meantime, if you want to see more of me and my work, go ahead and follow me on my Insta. Link is down in the description below. The handle is exactly the same as here on my YouTube. I am posting loads of reels all about my newest and latest projects, and of course any tips that you might want to know about. So go ahead and check it out down below. The pattern will be linked in the pinned comment and in the description box as per usual. That's the most direct way to support me and keep videos just like this one on my channel coming, as it's a lot of work and that would help me out very, very much. So thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you next Sunday. Bye guys!